If you had to pick one candidate in the vast Republican field who was the opposite of Donald Trump, who would it be? I've got my candidate, Ben Carson. Had a chance to sit down with him last week, and he's a soft-spoken guy, has a lot of quiet dignity to him. He doesn't speak usually in inflammatory sound bites. He's very well reasoned, comes from being a doctor, obviously. He's used to dealing with patients, giving them either good news or not so good news. And yet he's had this remarkable run for a guy who's never run for anything before. He's pretty clearly going to qualify for the Fox News debate this week. And though his numbers have dropped, as have many candidates' numbers dropped because of the Trump phenomenon. This is a guy who virtually came out of nowhere, the only African-American presidential candidate on the Republican side, and he is in the top 10. Fascinating to me to listen to him because he started out by bashing the press, and I can understand why he feels like he's not getting a fair shake from the media. At the same time, he has had some self-inflicted wounds in this campaign, but he has been smart enough to recognize that. So if you go through the greatest hits, or lowlights maybe I should say, of Carson, there was the time that he compared Obamacare to slavery and took a lot of flack for that. Then there was an interview with CNN where Carson talked about that being gay, in his view, was not a choice. And his example was, well, aren't there men who go into prison straight and they come out gay? He took a ton of flack for that and he apologized for that. And so he told me he had learned to be more careful about choosing his words because he said if you use certain words, then people can't hear you. They can't hear your message. And I think that is the maturing of a candidate who's never been a candidate before, understanding how even a word or a phrase in this hyper-speed political environment can go back to haunt you. And it's interesting also, we talked about issues ranging from immigration to flat tax and, of course, healthcare, which he has a different view of. He thinks there should be some alternative to the Obamacare that he despises rather than just repealing it and doing nothing. But what's interesting to me is basically he's a guy who feels called by God to be in this campaign. You know, you may recall that it was a couple of years ago at a national prayer breakfast when Carson took on President Obama that he got all this attention and ultimately decided that he should go into the race. And we got into a little bit of a back and forth about this plan for a flat tax, which would, in his view, affect billionaires and poor people equally. And I said, are you sure you don't want any progressive nature in the tax code at all? Because that'd be a pretty radical step. And he cited the Bible and he said, well, if you can convince me why the progressive approach is better than what God would prescribe, I'm all ears. I thought that was interesting that he made that religious reference. So the real question about Ben Carson is, and we'll see this in the debate, can a guy as low-key and soft-spoken as this break through when he's running against 16 or 17 other candidates who are not shy about getting into the arena and punching? Maybe his somewhat different approach will serve him well because he doesn't seem like a politician, because he's not a politician. But that was the space that he and Carly Fiorina were pretty much filling on their own until Trump came into the race. So Trump also, very different kind of guy, very different background, very different style to say the least. I think drawing some of the support that otherwise would have gone to Carson, because if you want a non-politician and you want somebody who you think can blow up the system or fix a broken system and take the fight to Hillary Clinton, maybe Trump's your guy. But you never know what's going to happen on that debate stage, and as this campaign goes on, whether Carson's more quiet approach might get him some traction or whether he will eventually fade away. You can read my interview with him online, foxnews.com.